Um, any time for that is disappointing for him, I know, because he works so stinking hard.
Coach Andy Reid thanked Travis Kelce for catching him from falling during the Chiefs' second preseason game against the Seahawks. His voice cracking as he expressed his gratitude. "Travis, you literally saved me, man. I could have hit the turf right in front of 70,000 people in the whole world, but you were there. Thank you, brother." Then Kansas City Chiefs head coach Andy Reid stood before the media ahead of his club's workout back at team headquarters on Monday. He started off addressing injuries, informing everyone that Felix Anudike-Uzomah strained his hamstring and that he would most likely go on injured reserve later that afternoon. Jack Cochran was out with a knee bone bruise and wouldn't practice. Ethan Driscoll was also absent. Mike Edwards strained his hamstring and wouldn't be practicing. Nazeed Johnson had a shoulder strain, so he was out too. Omar Norman Lott sprained his ankle and had aggravated it again, and Jalen Royals was sidelined due to knee tendonitis. Everyone else was set to go, and Reid explained that this session would be similar to a regular in-season Wednesday practice, giving the media a dry run of how things would look once real games began, both on the field and in terms of the schedule. The room was then opened for questions. When asked if he anticipated the starters playing more in the upcoming preseason game against the Bears, Reid responded matter-of-factly that the starters would indeed start the game, and from there, decisions would be made based on how things went. The next inquiry focused on the young players at the left tackle spot. Reid said he liked how physical Josh Simmons and Kingsley Suamataia were playing, and he believed that the more reps they got, the better off they'd be. He was pleased with their progress so far. Another reporter asked what went into the decision to play the starters in both the second and third preseason games. Reid said he simply wanted to give the best look possible to the guys fighting for roster spots, adding there were some players right on the border of making the team, so he wanted to give them a fair shot. He also wanted to see the quarterback work with the first offensive line unit. The subject of Felix Anudike-Uzomah came up again, with Reid being asked how disappointing it was for Felix to go on IR entering his third year. Reid admitted it was tough, saying Felix had worked extremely hard and that any amount of missed time was disappointing for him. The next question was about evaluating Josh Simmons after 2 preseason games and as the regular season approached. Reid praised Simmons for his approach, saying he hadn't missed a beat, hadn't missed a day, and had consistently been available and working with offensive line coach Andy Heck, getting better every day. He liked where things stood, but emphasized the need to keep pushing forward since Simmons was still a young player but was working his tail off. Kingsley Suamataia's performance over the past couple of preseason games was brought up. Reid said, Kingsley and Josh, both, had developed a chemistry that was evident, especially in the run game. They were really working well together there, though they were still figuring things out in the passing game. He noted that the pair handled some blitz packages well the week before, even though Kingsley had a couple of hiccups where he tripped over a back's foot. Other than that, Reid thought he did a solid job. The complexity of the offensive line was discussed, particularly whether the main challenges were technical or related to communication. Reid responded that the young tackles had been working overtime on both aspects. He said they'd face new challenges in games, and how they handled those would reveal a lot. When asked if working with a rookie left tackle who had never played in the NFL was just part of the process for a coach, Reid said that being in the league long enough meant dealing with turnover and having young guys who needed to step up and play. He said both Josh Simmons and Kingsley Suamataia were talented, wanted to be good, and were putting in the work. Both were high draft picks, and coaches had to let them go out there and learn, knowing there would be a few bumps along the way but expecting to see steady growth, just as they had seen a few years ago with the young secondary group. He was then asked about Kingsley Suamataia's meeting presence and attitude regarding the left tackle challenge. Reid described Kingsley as a sharp, quiet guy who had embraced the left tackle role, working with Josh Simmons to build something together. while also focusing on his own job, shifting from tackle to guard as necessary. Reid liked the way Kingsley handled himself in meetings, noting that he'd grown in his attention to detail and that last year's limited playing time had helped. He said they would see how things went from there. When the question of Rice's league suspension came up, Reid said they'd heard about the hearing but not the details. He didn't think anyone knew the specifics at that moment, and that when they did, the team would handle whatever was required. At this point, if you're enjoying these inside moments from Coach Reid, be sure to subscribe for more exclusive updates. Hollywood Brown's status became the topic, with Reid being asked what he wanted to see from Brown that week and whether he'd be able to play in the final preseason game. Reid said Hollywood had done a bit of work the previous day, which was a good sign and would do a little more that day. The plan was to see how Brown progressed, making it clear that it wasn't about willingness. Brown wanted to be out there. It was about not rushing and risking a setback with the injury heading into the season. The questions kept coming, and, with each, Reid gave direct, measured responses, always with an eye toward both the immediate and the long term, never letting his gaze wander from the work in front of him. The preseason, he said, provided a unique opportunity to see young players develop in real time, to test lineups, and to challenge the roster with game-speed situations. The talk returned to the offensive line and the chemistry developing among the young tackles. Reid went on to say that while the physicality of Simmons and Swamatiya was encouraging, their willingness to communicate and solve problems together was even more important. He explained that in the trenches, things could change in a split second. A defensive lineman might stunt or a linebacker might blitz, and it was up to those young tackles to adjust on the fly, learn from their mistakes, and get better with every snap. He recounted a moment from the last game, recalling how Simmons signaled a protection change and Swamatiya picked it up instantly, helping to spring a run that went for a first down. Those little moments, he said, were what coaches lived for, watching young players figure things out. When asked about the challenges of balancing reps for established starters and young hopefuls, Reid said it was a constant puzzle, especially with injuries in the mix. He said that every preseason someone unexpected would emerge. A rookie who looked lost in May might suddenly find their stride in August, and that was why he always pushed for competition at every spot. You never know when a guy's going to step up and surprise you, he said, and that was part of what kept him coming back year after year. He spoke about the importance of veteran leadership and mentioned Travis Kelce's role in helping bring along the younger players. Kelce, he said, was always willing to pull a rookie aside after practice, offer a word of encouragement, or demonstrate a technique. Reid said Kelce's willingness to help was invaluable, and that the younger guys respected him because they knew he'd put in the work. He said it wasn't just on the field, either. Kelce set the tone in the locker room, in meetings, and everywhere in between. He's the kind of guy you want on your side, not just because he can make plays, but because he makes everyone around him better, Reid said, and you could hear the gratitude in his voice. Subscribe for more Chiefs stories and behind-the-scenes moments. The session shifted to a discussion on team chemistry, and Reid remarked on how important it was for the entire roster, not just the offense or defense, but for every player in every spot. He said that the best teams he'd been around were always the ones that played for each other, where no one cared who got the credit as long as the job got done.